Wow, friends, it's so good to have you in worship. We've already had a lot going on. Stacy has shared with us this idea that we're better together. We've prayed and consecrated over the gifts that people have offered, and you still have the opportunity to do that. I want to give you a chance to hear from a bunch of our staff. Some of this you've seen. It's a little bit of a recap of what we've talked about in this Better Together series. Check it out. When the pandemic hit, obviously nobody had any idea what was going on, and it took a lot of adaptation from our staff. One of the things that we saw, and we were even maybe a little bit surprised by, was the continued investment of our community. None of that would have been possible without the continued faithfulness of our community and those who are entrusting us to continue to carry this word, this good news to the world.
It is so important to me that kids and youth understand how much they are valued by God and how much God loves them. I could not survive life without my faith, and it is so important for me that our kids and youth have that same faith to guide them through their tough times.
We made over 1,100 calls trying to connect with church members, checking in on them, seeing if there was anything that the church could do to support them.
Your continued support ensures that we have the resources that we need to continue and to grow adult discipleship opportunities.
The continued support allows us every single year to gift any third grader who wants it their very own Bible and resources to go with it. And it is such a joy to see their eyes light up when they get, and many times, what is their very first Bible.
Thank you for all the ways that you support this ministry.
It's a great place to work. I always tell people this is my dream job, so I'm very grateful to be here and don't plan on going anywhere anytime soon.
Thank you so much for any gift, large or small. You really are becoming the evangelist, really taking and stepping out and furthering the gospel of Jesus Christ.
I'd like to thank everyone for your contributions, both in the past and in the future, to help keep our beautiful church running.
Thank you for all of the generosity, all of your kindness, and all of your willingness to support us and encourage us with the funds that you've given, as well as with the prayers that you have offered.
Because we cannot do ministry without you. You are an extension of our team, and we thank you.
I appreciate the generosity and support of the church. It is an honor and a joy to serve here and to be part of your ongoing faith story.
Friends, thank you for investing in this community and allowing us to share the good news with those around us. It is so appreciated. You help make all of this happen, and we are better together.
I'm happy to share with you today my gratefulness as well. As we approach November and the season of gratitude, I want to start early because of what it is that we as Grace United Methodist Church have been able to do because of you. Friends, you have, I think, the best staff team in the city. From our technology team to our evangelism team to our pastoral care team to our Christian education next gen folks. Friends, you really do have the best of the best, and you've allowed that to be because you've invested in that. Our music folks are the top in the city. And so friends, as we come to our commitment and celebration, know that your investment goes to good use, because all of those teams put together are what allow us to spread the good news of Jesus Christ, to understand that the gospel is indeed still what keeps the world going and allows us to care for those in greatest need, and reminds us that we have a purpose beyond ourselves, and that purpose gives meaning to our lives and meaning to the world. So friends, we are better together. We are better with you, and we give you thanks for all that you have done and continue to do for us to celebrate the good news.
Over these last few weeks, as we've talked about stewardship, we've been talking about the ways that we employ and utilize and invest and allocate our gifts. That's fundamentally what stewardship is about. The gifts that we've been given, how do we use them? How do we put them to use? How do we help them be a part of building God's kingdom in our midst? And we talk a lot about money. And here's the deal, friends. We know that money is important. To be able to provide worship online, that costs money. The place that we gather in person person costs money, staff and technology, you know all of that. And so it's important for that reason. It's also important as we share church with other people, as we meet needs, tangible needs within our community. All of that is absolutely true. But talking about money is also important because it's a reflection as individuals of how we live, of what we value, what we prioritize. We often talk about a budget being a moral document. That's true for you and I. We are invited, and I believe it really genuinely is a joy to share financially in the things that we believe in and the things that we think provide a life transformation. And I think this community is one of those. And as we talk about stewardship, we don't only talk about finances, and I hope you know that. I hope you've heard that theme come through, that the gifts that we talk about are not only financial, it's the unique experiences, it's the perspective, it's the time that you have, it's the ways that we serve, it's the prayer that you spend, that you give, the time that you spend on your knees or quietly in your bed or whatever it is on behalf of this congregation and the people that we interact with. All of that is about stewardship. All of the gifts that we have, the home, the job, the spaces that we occupy, the family that we share, how we utilize those gifts for the building of a kingdom, investing in something beyond ourselves. Stewardship is about all of those things. And what we've talked about this month is the ways that we pool those resources and how we use those things together. So this week, I want to begin by telling you a little bit of a story. Just over a week ago, Hope and I were at a concert where some friends were playing in a coffee shop. And so it was a pretty low-key deal. But there was two things that really stuck out to me, and they have everything to do with what we're talking about today. Neither one of them was about the music, actually, but the music was fantastic. So there were these two girls, two sisters, young girls, who were running around throughout the show. Their dad is one of the musicians who was playing. And it was so incredible to see the energy and the confidence they had as they sat down at tables, as they greeted people who were around. I mean, these are real young girls. As they danced, as they laughed, as they chased each other, there was no shame, there was no doubt, there was nothing. There was just this beautiful sense of joy and expectation that they would be welcomed and included. They felt so at home, and I loved watching all of that. The other thing that caught my eye was there was two other kids who were sitting next to us, and one was this teeny tiny little girl, I think probably 6 to 9 months old, who came in a carrier. When mom got her out, she's this teeny tiny girl with a giant bow on. It was so cute, and she was happy throughout the whole thing. And her older brother was sitting right next to me, and he was probably, I don't know, 3, 4, 5, something like that. And he was very content. At the beginning of the show, between every song, or even if there was a little bit too long of a silence in the midst of a song, he would clap and cheer. It didn't matter if anybody else was. A couple of times because he did it, the rest of us were like, oh yeah, we're supposed to clap now, right? Anyway, he was very excited to be there. As time went on, he started to get a little bit antsy, as children can do. And his grandma reached in and grabbed an apple and gave it to him. And right then, he was happy as a clam. Everything was good. So you can imagine my concern was when several minutes later, he dropped the apple on the ground. And I thought, uh-oh, the bottom's going to drop out. He's been here for like an hour now. He's going to throw a fit, have a tantrum, whatever. But he didn't. He hopped down off the bench. He picked up the apple, and he also sort of like realized that he had legs. And so he kind of began to dance. He picked up the apple, he took a bite, and he was good to go. And then he began to dance and eat his apple, and he walked around. He dropped the apple a few more times. He didn't seem that concerned about it, and he kept eating it. It was so fun to watch. Well, guess what happened? The younger girl of the sisters came and ran into him as she was running around. And I mean, like literally ran into him. And so they sort of stopped and looked at each other. And they had that look that children have when they encounter another human who is their own size, of like fascination and curiosity, like, oh, I'm looking at you in the eyes. And they kind of looked at one another for a minute or so, and then they just began to laugh. And they slowly began to dance, the two of them. And at some point, the little boy took his apple and he looked at it and he held it out and the girl took a big bite out of it. She got big eyes, and then she began to clap as she took that down. It was so adorable. Then he took another bite, and for several minutes they danced, they ran around, and they took bites back and forth out of the apple. It was truly, truly adorable. And the joy that they were sharing in the midst of that was so evident and so apparent. Friends, joy is what we're talking about this morning. And we have two scriptures that are going to help guide us in the midst of this conversation as we do that. But I want us just to think for a minute about joy. And I just wonder, when is the moment that we stopped beginning from a place of joy, most especially when we shared? I know that children don't always want to share, but what I've observed in children is that most of the time when they do, they're very quick to do it out of gratitude, out of thanksgiving, and they're very quick to find joy in it. At what point in our lives does that go away? And do we feel like when we're giving, we do it begrudgingly? Or we do it because we're obligated to? I think that happens at some point as our legs get longer and our years get longer, but I'm not sure where it is, because children don't seem to have that. They seem to find a lot of joy, and quite frankly, they seem to find the possibility of sharing to be a lot easier. And so I want us to think about when we stopped doing that and why that happened. And listen, friends, maybe it's good that we grow out of sharing an apple that's been on the floor with a stranger in a coffee shop. So I'm not saying that it's not all that it's all bad. I'm just saying that disposition that says when we share, I expect to find joy in the midst of that. When does that go away? I want us to think about that, because I'm not always a cheerful giver. And I guess I think you might be the same way. Sometimes I give begrudgingly. Sometimes I give reluctantly. Sometimes I feel like it's really putting me out to share of what I have. Not always. Sometimes I get it right, but sometimes I am that way. And sometimes I don't share at all. But I think we can find so much joy in the sharing. And so that's what I want to talk about today. If you have a Bible, we're going to read from 2 Corinthians. And I would encourage you to follow along. And this reading is one that's deep and that's nuanced and that's got a lot of layers in it. And Paul is referencing a lot of other scriptures. And so just to give you sort of a high-level overview, Paul is referencing Hosea and Philippians and Deuteronomy and Isaiah in the midst of all of this. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through all of those individually, but just know as he's talking about this, either implicitly or explicitly, this is the deep history, the deep well from which he's drawing. And I think it's really beautiful. But here are the words. We're going to read, chapter 7, beginning in verse 7. Each of you must give as you have made up your mind, for God loves a cheerful giver. Not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And God is able to provide you with every blessing in abundance, so that by always having enough of everything, you may share abundantly in every good work. As it is written, and this is Psalm 112, He scatters abroad, He gives to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. God, who supplies the seed to the sower and bread for food, will supply and multiply your seed for sowing and increasing the harvest of your righteousness. You will be enriched in every way for your great generosity, which will produce thanksgiving to God through us. For the rendering of ministry not only supplies the needs for the saints, but also overflows with many thanksgivings to God. So we'll stop right there, and then we'll jump back to the Sermon on the Mount in a few moments. But you have this deep, nuanced, rich well from which he is drawing. And then all of that leads to this place that says that you will be enriched in every way through your great generosity. And friends, here's one of my proposals today, is that when we talk about being enriched through our generosity, a piece of what Paul means is that we're going to experience joy. We're going to rejoice. We're going to experience contentment in our generosity. Paul talks about this in Philippians. He says, I rejoice in God, and I know what it is to be content with whatever I have, whether it's having much or little. That's from Philippians chapter 4. Basically, he's saying, no matter the circumstances, I found that I can rejoice, that I can give thanks. And that changes his whole disposition. And you see that throughout Paul's writings. And so it leads to this point that says, you'll be enriched in every way through your generosity. And then he says this, your generosity will produce thanksgiving to God through us. So we've talked a lot about how stewardship is about giving back of the gifts that God gives to us. And that we do that from a place of gratitude. The same thing is that is true when we share with gifts from one another. When you give gifts to this ministry, I give thanksgiving to God for you, for your faithfulness. When we get to go share good news with other people, invite people into relationship, talk about what's going on in this community, they give thanks for the resources that have been invested and entrusted in this place. When we give gifts, it produces thanksgiving to God and other people, and that's beautiful. That should bring a smile to our face. Continuing on, it leads to this conclusion, and I love this passage that's been chosen for today. Our generosity, which produces thanksgiving, is used for the rendering of ministry, and it not only supplies the needs for the saints, but also overflows with many thanksgivings to God. Friends, that's what your gifts do. They supply for the ministry. They provide the needs for the ministry. They provide for those within and beyond our community, and they are an overflowing well of gratitude and grace. And I think that is such a beautiful image. When we choose to share of the gifts that we've been entrusted, we get to share in the joy, and it meets the needs for people. It transforms lives, and we all get to experience joy together. And friends, who doesn't want to know that kind of joy? I want to know that kind of joy. I want to experience that in my life day to day. I want to experience that as I give and I share. All of us want that kind of joy. Don't we all want to live in sort of a palms open posture? Rather than a fists clenched kind of posture? Isn't there a reason that we look at the children in the coffee shop or wherever you see them and watch them share together and recognize how freely they give and they share and they interact? There's a reason that we look at that and say that's beautiful, because that's a lot more natural place for us to be in. But the weight of the world and the struggles that we face and the pressure that we face, as we talked about last week, all of it can sort of bog us down. It can kind of make us begin to dance to the drumbeat of scarcity instead of abundance. It can cause us to look out for number one above all else. We internalize all of these pressures and we begin to think that we need to hold on. And if we let go, if we share, we sometimes do it begrudgingly instead of out of a place of joy. And so when we read the gospel this morning, which I want to jump to right now, I wonder if one of the things that Jesus might be speaking about is joy. Hear these words. This is Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Search and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened for you. For everyone who asks receives, and everyone who searches finds, and for everyone who knocks the door will be opened. Is there anyone among you who, when your child asks for bread, gives a stone? Or if a child asks for a fish, will you give your child a snake? If then you who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good things to those who ask him? In everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this is the law and the prophets. So friends, I wonder, as Jesus talks about asking and seeking and knocking, if one of the things that he's sort of implying there is ask for joy and you will receive. Seek it and you will find it. Knock and the way will be made that you might experience joy. Maybe this passage isn't, as it's sometimes read, so material focused. Maybe Jesus isn't saying that if you give, you'll get a tenfold abundance will suddenly show up. Maybe it's not about financial or any sort of physical thing. Maybe instead it's talking about the sort of things that God is inviting, that Jesus is inviting us into. Remember the context of this. This comes in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is talking about an upside down world. Jesus is saying things like, don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough worries for itself, and don't judge other people. And build your house on the solid foundation of God's teaching. He opens with the Beatitudes in which everything is turned upside down. This is the kind of kingdom that he's talking about. So when he gives these words, ask and seek and knock, I don't think it's a transactionary sort of or prosperity sort of gospel. I think instead what it is, it's an invitation to ask and to seek and to trust that we will receive the gifts of joy and peace and hope and love, that we will experience those in our lives. So that's the context that we find ourselves in. And so maybe in doing this with others and giving to others and investing, we might uncover a sense of joy. As we do that, I think we emerge out of this radical individuality that we sometimes mark our lives with, that says only I can rely on me and I'm the only one that I can rely on, into a sense of community. As we move out of scarcity, we move into a perspective of abundance. And as we grow from holding tightly to living and sharing openly from a place of gratitude, this way of being, this invitation to joy, friends, it doesn't come easy, and we don't experience it all the time, but it is most definitely not circumstance dependent. We can have joy in the midst of sorrow and struggle and strife. We can experience joy in the midst of a pandemic. It doesn't depend on the circumstances. It's deeper than that. It doesn't mean that we'll always be happy. We may wrestle with finding joy in life, most definitely. But we have this opportunity to experience this beauty and this possibility and this deep, deep, deep joy. And I'll tell you this, it may not be circumstance dependent, but I do believe that it is much easier to find with others. I believe that the joy is much better and much easier to find together. Together takes the edge off of many a struggle, and together can accomplish more than alone ever will. And that's why we've been talking about this all this month, that when we share in the good and the bad, when we share in the giving of ourselves, when we offer ourselves to the community and to the work that God is doing in this place, when we have that full tapestry in place, it is a deep and rich and beautiful reality. And it's much, much, much deeper and richer when all of us are a part of it. It's far more complete and nuanced as we give with joy and gratitude, as we share in heartache and struggle, as we do the work and the investment and the study and discernment. When we do it all together, the picture that we get to share with the world is amazing. Our ministry becomes more nimble. Our possibilities become that much greater when each of us offers of our gifts. So I wanted to share one closing story. A couple of weeks ago, my wife and I were out in Colorado. And while we were there, a perspective of this whole set of scriptures that I've read throughout my years and always thought were kind of odd. I got sort of a new perspective on it. So there are these passages, particularly in the Old Testament, that talk about all of nature singing and dancing and proclaiming and all of that. And so there's things like Psalm 96, beginning in verse 11, says, "Let the heavens be glad and let the earth rejoice. Let the sea roar and all that fills it. Let the field exult and everything in it. Then shall the trees of the forest sing for joy before the Lord." The chronicler in 1 Chronicles 16 says the trees of the forest will sing for joy. And in Isaiah chapter 55, it says the mountains and the hills will burst into singing and the trees will shout for joy. Okay, I've read all of these and they're kind of beautiful and I kind of love them and they're a little bit weird, these passages. But I began to think about them differently while we were in Colorado. You see, my wife was really committed to seeing the changing of the leaves. She really wanted to see the fall colors in Colorado. And so we had done research, and I think we drove a couple of 100 miles from the place we were staying to different places that were supposed to be really good and lit up in color. And here's the deal. We were pretty early in the season, so there wasn't a lot of places. What we would see is one tree, one maple, one whatever that had changed, and it was really pretty, and we got some pictures of it and all of that. And then we actually found this one place, interestingly enough, just down the road from where we were staying, where it was the side of this mountain, and all up the mountain, there was all of these aspens that had changed into just this bright orange and red. I mean, it was like the hill was on fire. It was absolutely gorgeous. And so we stopped and we kind of looked at it and my wife said, "Do you know why all of these have changed?" And I said, Because it's fall? I don't know. And she said, no, the reason that all of these trees changed at the same time is because aspens aren't like other trees. They're all, like when you get them in a grove or in an area like that, they're all interconnected. And so you think of them as all being individual trees, but in fact, they share the same root system. And so while other trees may change individually, aspens, they tend to all change at once because they're all connected. It's like all of these individual members are connected in one body. What a beautiful image that is. And how amazing it is to look on that hillside and see all of that color all at once. Friends, that's how I think about the body of Christ. That's how I think about our work together. When we all recognize that we are individuals and we are connected and we're a part of the same community, and when we all move in step with one another, the work we're able to do is incredible, and the joy that we're able to bring is unbelievable. We all get to be a part of that. All of those scriptures that talk about nature and trees singing and shouting for joy, it's as if all the world is clamoring, anticipating, getting ready to respond to the mercy and the grace and the gifts that God has given to all of creation. Friends, I want us to be in the same place, to give out of a place of gratitude, to join together in community, to move forward with one another, to be clamoring out of that place of deep appreciation for all that we have, so that we can together experience joy. We are indeed better together. Thank you for being on this journey. May you go to invite other people to experience that as well. Amen. Let's take a few moments for reflection.